You don't have to be liked by everyone. Basically, someone doesn't like you at a basic level because you're white, or black, or whatever. Maybe because at a secondary level, you're turned off by religious sentiment and just brush it off. Or maybe because you're hella religious and rant about it all the time. Maybe you just don't care as much about cars as much as someone else, or maybe you just make them jealous because you handle problems more easily than they do. No matter what you do, people will dislike you. Whether they show it or not, or whether you know it or not, doesn't change it. Terrorists don't see themselves as bad guys. To them, we are the bad guys killing their families and ruining their country. Every individual is the hero of their own story. If you saw a guy punching a vending machine, you'd think, what a butthole, anger problems much. And yet if you kick the vending machine, it's because the train was early, the bus was late, and the machine just ate your change. Perfectly reasonable. As are many of the world's perceived enemies. Republicans, Democrats, terrorists, criminals, me, you. This isn't an attempt to justify terrorism or other evils, just an attempt to highlight that people we view as absolutely evil see themselves as heroes or the good guys. Road rage is another good example. We've all cut off and been cut off, but we rarely think of ourselves as the buttholes. Doesn't make what we do less bad, but if you remember that you once had good reason to do something, maybe you can at least understand the guy cutting you off and keep your stress level down. There are going to be times when you've tried your absolute best at something, done everything in your power to try and make it work. But it still doesn't end up the way you want it to. This isn't a reflection of your failure as a person, sometimes this is just life. People mostly don't care about you and your issues, so don't bother hiding or being embarrassed or afraid to be judged. Just live for yourself. I mean, obviously besides family and friends. Like for example acquaintances or some people from work or something else. I always fear to disappoint and be a loser in someone else's eyes, but in the end there are only a handful of people's opinions you should really care about. Everyone is an idiot, just in a different subject. Night school. A master's of business administration. Smart people in a room, learning. So in a lot of ways, we were similar, yet the expertise that people had and offered for their fields was very specific. Given the chance to talk about their domain and their business, they sounded brilliant, but faced with something different, not so smart sounding. That's a big part of the reason why MBAs focus on case studies, to give people exposure outside of their usual realm. There's no such thing as the one, there are only good ones and bad ones. I think a big part of why people get divorced is that they go into marriage thinking that they'd found the one, and when things go sour, they just sort of think, well, I guess I was wrong, so I shouldn't be with this person anymore. The most successful marriages I've seen are the ones where the two people acknowledge that their relationship is a choice, not that they were bound together by some mystic force. It doesn't sound romantic, but to me that commitment itself is beautiful. I'm not inspired by this nebulous idea of love conquering all, but I love when people make the choice to fight for their love. Most people, including your friends, don't want to know what's really wrong, especially if it's serious. It's easy to be around someone when they're fun, but when things get serious, a lot of people will bail. Anyone who doesn't bail when things aren't fun, are the people worth keeping beyond a polite social acquaintance. You're never going to be completely happy. You can be happy for a day, maybe even a month if you're lucky, but no one is ever satisfied and happy in life. You'll always need more of something, whether it's more money, more friends, more square footage, more free time, or more sex. Accepting that you'll at best be mostly content is the key to less stress. Every relationship has problems. It's your ability to deal with them in a healthy manner that makes it easier. Another harsh reality is that while every relationship has problems, some have way too many problems and not every relationship is salvageable. You should certainly try your best to make things work, of course, but you should also be able to accept when to end it if it comes to that. Sometimes things just aren't meant to work out, sometimes there is no solving it, and that's okay. So many people spend their lives in relationships that they are miserable in, that both people are miserable in, simply because they think ending it is something to be ashamed of. That it would be some kind of failure or weakness. I certainly encourage couples to try and work through their problems, if it is worth it to them, but at the same time, don't stay in an unhappy relationship simply because you feel obligated to. Fix it or move on. You are entitled to your opinion. But you aren't entitled for people to respect your opinion. This needs to be realized by a lot of people. I remember Trump getting butthurt that Univision canceled a show or something of his in retaliation to his racist comments, basically calling it his constitutional right. Nope. You said something that pissed off a huge group of people. No one's going to stop you, but that doesn't mean they can't do anything about it. I work in IT. Everyone lies. Everyone. I never clicked it. I didn't open it. I didn't install it. I don't know what day I took my computer home. I don't know what that website is. I didn't know I can't plug in my USB. I didn't think file sharing was illegal. That porn site was from an ad on a legitimate site. I rebooted it before I called you. I always patch my system. And on and on. We're like doctors, we need the truth. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, and how vast amounts of people will never really understand the meaning of that. That expression means that it doesn't matter if you intend to do something good, it matters if you do something good. I suppose the modern day equivalent is that sharing a kale smoothie recipe on Facebook and then drinking a milkshake is the road to being fat. It's also like people justifying shitty actions because they have a positive goal in mind. Sort of the ends justify the means. It doesn't always start out bad. Things just escalate because one might be so invested in the outcome and intent, that along the way they don't realize the negative effect of actions they might be taking to achieve the goal. You're gonna mess up. A lot. Just accept it, learn from it, and move on. There are some things you'll never be able to do. It sounds terribly depressing at first, but when you think about it, it becomes humbling. Until a man is 25, he still thinks, every so often, that under the right circumstances he could be the baddest person in the world. If I moved to a martial arts monastery in China and studied real hard for 10 years. If my family was wiped out by Colombian drug dealers and I swore myself to revenge. If I got a fatal disease, had 1 year to live, devoted it to wiping out street crime. If I just dropped out and devoted my life to being bad, Neil Stevenson. Nobody cares about your actions, mannerisms and behaviors as much as you do. Once you realize that, it becomes a lot easier to just embrace who you are and live your own life. I actually just had a thing like this happen the other day. My coworker was acting weird, being dismissive of me, not responding to emails, being snappy when I asked him a question, and overall ignoring me and acting like a butthole. I went through about a dozen different emotions about it. I was confused and then annoyed and then angry and then indignant and then defensive and on and on and on until it finally settled into fear. He is higher in the corporate hierarchy than me, and I just knew that he was behaving this way towards me because I was going to get fired or something. Then I just asked him what was going on. He apologized for being such a male genital, and told me he had been offered another job and was struggling to figure out what he was going to do. He is taking the other job. And then I felt like a selfish, obsessive twat because I had figured it was all about me. The truth is, we just float through people's lives just like they float through ours. We pass across their vision and they're like, oh hey, there's insert name, wonder how she's doing, and then they go back to thinking about whatever the hell is going on in their lives, and that's basically 100% of people you meet. They are primarily concerned with themselves. It's a real load off your back, but super hard to fully accept. Looks matter. It doesn't mean if you haven't hit the genetic lottery you're screwed and should just give up. There's almost always something you can do to improve your appearance. Confidence and personal style can make an ugly person into an attractive one, simply by how different they look. You'd be surprised how different someone can look with only a few minor cosmetic alterations. You are average. It sucks. We can't all be above expectations or else there would be no average. And your mom lied when she said that you were special. I had an old coworker that I became pretty good friends with who always said his goal in everything he did was to be average. Not in the sense that he was less than and wanted to be better, because he was certainly above average in many areas, but because being average means nobody pays attention to you, good or bad. Also, if you have always done an average job at something you can do well in and suddenly need or want to impress somebody, it's easy to do so. It's super cliche, but the simple fact that life isn't fair. Sometimes you just have to grit your teeth and bear through the BS. This has just seemed like second nature to me for the longest time. Some people though, even those old enough to be my grandfather, just refuse to accept it. I used to work as an electrician with a tradesman who easily had the most victimized attitude I've ever encountered. He was constantly complaining about how one of the other tradesmen, who had started even after I had, was getting treated better by the boss than he was. This affected not only him but most of the other employees as well, including myself. The difference was that I could see why it was happening and just accepted it. There was nothing I could do about it, it was just plain unfair. So I kept my head down and worked away, but this guy was just always on about how he was getting the shaft. We were both suffering the same consequences, but I can definitely say I was happier in my day-to-day life at the company than he was during the 5 years I was there. I don't know if I could say that my life is much better for accepting that sometimes it's unfair, but I have no hesitation in saying his life is worse for not being able to accept it. You will lose everything you love. Whether it goes first or you do, nothing is forever. So stop taking and posing for so many pictures that ruin the moment, and just enjoy who you were with, and where you're at. You ain't going to make it as a musician, man. Because rockstar is basically a job that has a billion applicants and only about 30 vacancies. Maths. Just write your songs and do your thing as something for yourself and maybe your kids or grandkids. Most musicians don't treat it as a full-time job. Practice and skill alone will not get you there. It takes a ridiculous amount of networking and building a good reputation with club owners and booking agents. Drugs, alcohol and ego come into play very seriously for a rising band or star, and it doesn't take many mess-ups for you to get blacklisted by promoters or venues. Many great musicians get stuck as the big fish in a little pond once they hit local celebrity status and simply never leave the comfort zone of their adoring hometown fans. Most musicians defeat themselves when it comes to success. Making it to the top requires serious business sense and skill if you aren't involved with the big industry labels. If you are lucky enough to be chosen by the industry to be distributed, you pretty much just do what they say, stick to the contract and wait till you can be happy again doing your own unimpeded music. The record industry likes to sign like bands that may be competing for the same crowd, sign them to a multi-record deal and shelve all those albums, never to be released. They basically buy out the competition, but in the end the band will pay the company in some way. One example is that studio time and production services are offered to bands on the condition that the costs will be taken out of the record sales. Record doesn't get released, the band pays those costs. This pretty much kills any band and crushes all hope for success that a musician may have once held. You can't force someone to love you like you love him or her. Loving what you do is a myth. Working sucks and it's going to be that way for the rest of your life. This is coming from someone who turned a hobby into a career. There's a huge difference between doing something for fun, and when you have no choice but to do it, even when you don't feel like it. I was a pro photographer for a few years. Basically quit so I could actually enjoy photography again. There's a massive difference than heading out with my camera to get the perfect picture and having to go shoot yet another wedding. I still do the occasional job, but having a full-time job means I can pick and choose rather than have to. The world is only interested in what it can get from you. It's not as cynical as it sounds. But it means you have to produce to be liked and successful. Another way to put it is that no one gives a crap about who you are inside. Two guys walk past a homeless person. One is deeply moved, wishes they could help and is genuinely concerned but has no cash to give. The other thinks dirty hobo and gives him a handful for change so he'll leave him the hell alone. As far as the world is concerned, the second guy is the better person. There is no such thing as a perfect drug, especially weed. Just because it's natural doesn't make it good or completely safe. Even though it does have medicinal properties, that doesn't make up for the fact that it can trigger psychosis. This happened to me, like a waking nightmare that went on for a week, induce schizophrenia in people who are genetically predisposed to it, and can actually worsen symptoms of depression and anxiety in habitual users. Most of my stoners friends will not accept this. I have one who is literally emotionally dependent on weed and cannot cognitively handle his own emotions sober, having used it to self-medicate for over 10 years starting at 15. He had been staying off it for a while, but then our stoner friends encouraged him to smoke again cause it's practically medicine. Instead of wasting all your time and money trying to get high, just learn how to enjoy life for what it is and learn how to handle hard times instead of trying to run away. You'll build character and lead a much more fulfilling and constructive life. You are going to die. Maybe in 5 minutes, maybe in 50 years. But we are all going to die. Don't get so caught up in wanting to live longer that you don't enjoy the life you have now. Accept the things you cannot change the things that you can, and learn the difference. Don't waste mental energy on things that are just the way they are. Some things aren't fair and there's nothing you can do about it. Accept it as fact and move on. Learn how to affect the things you can change, and change them. I know a few people who need to hear this repeatedly. Generally speaking, at least in adulthood, it's not the world that is against you. The decisions you make and the way you react determines how things will go. Stop being so angry at everything and everyone and push your life in the direction you want it to go. You're probably not going to be famous, and you most likely won't even be rich. Stop trying, you're only stressing yourself out. Enjoy the life you have. A pessimist is just a disappointed optimist. Both have an expectation of the world and a way it should be, and the only difference is how often that expectation is met and how often the world fails to meet it. The problem isn't in the world The world isn't broken, it's not right or wrong. It just is. The only thing wrong is your expectation of it. When you can stop expecting the world to be any one way, then you will be more open to just how strange and interesting and fantastic the world can be, good or bad. That's a much more enjoyable way to live. Half empty, half full, no one promised there would be a glass at all. The fact that it has anything in it is just fantastic in itself. That you are not perfect, that you will make mistakes, and that it is your duty as a rational human being to take responsibility for those mistakes. Nothing will make your friends disappear quicker than blaming everything that happens to you on someone else. You're not such a good person. You're terrible, and probably often. I'm not kidding. Your religion is not right. I feel like religion is kind of an ignorance is bliss thing. There are parts of it you can't prove right and parts of it you can't prove wrong. So you might as well believe what you believe and just learn to be okay with the fact that other people won't feel the same. That your own life is just as interesting as other people's. When you compare your behind the scenes to other people's highlight reel, you feel bad about yourself. You are inconsequential. In the grand scheme of things, what you do won't make a lasting difference. In the end, we will all die and the world will end and the universe will die. But just because you are inconsequential in the timeline of man doesn't mean you don't mean something great to the people around you. The only thing people initially give a crap about is what you can do for them. It doesn't matter how smart you are, how good a heart you have, how complex and justified your feelings are. The only initial concern anyone has about you is what do they want or are they planning to do and how will it affect me? All the other stuff comes after. Once you learn to present value or advantage or interest off the bat, you have a much easier time moving through the world. If that girl doesn't want to give you a chance, quit wasting your time trying to get with her and spend time with girls that will. She's a waste of time, not the one that got away. Most people don't make decisions based on well-reasoned and researched data. They also don't care if you have that information or expertise. They are willfully ignorant. Once you accept this and stop trying to reason with people and instead manipulate them to make the choices you want, you'll be much happier. Religion was ever since used by humans as a tool to control the masses. There may be a god, but he does not look like Obi-Wan Kenobi and he definitely doesn't give two craps about the issues that hardcore religious people literally kill and die for. I understand that rational thought goes out the window with religion, but if there was some omnipotent being that started all of this, do you really think he cares if you wear a scarf over your head at all times? You think he would care that two people of the same sex got married? Do you really think he would want people that believe in a different religion to be killed? Really? Because of a compilation of texts written by humans over 1,000 years ago. You are not entitled to anything. Put your life into perspective, not just in the scale of geological time, but in comparison to all the human lives that have ever been lived. You can be wiped out and it isn't an injustice. You aren't special. Your death won't be remembered. Life isn't supposed to be consistently happy. Depression isn't something you fix, because it's not broken. It's a natural part of human existence. Once you let go of the idea you are owed anything by the world, your rights, your happiness, your life, you can really start to appreciate everything you've got for the short time you've got it. You've got less than a century on this planet and most of it will be a struggle, but in this era you've still got a better life than even kings and queens of history. Stop complaining, stop making excuses, stop blaming others. Enjoy every second of what you've got, even the bad parts. Life doesn't get better until you make it better. This is true to everything, yet people only want free handouts. Don't make enough money? Instead of crying on the internet, complaining to friends and protesting higher wages, how about you get promoted or find better paying work? This is a hard task like everything else in life, but it's easy when you figure out what I mean. If you don't make it better, it will never be better. So every day you don't take one step forward to your goals, you unknowingly take 2 steps back. Real life love is not like it is on TV or movies. There is a reason those things are fake. I have known several people who broke up because of this. One girl told my brother that monogamy meant she could have sex with any guy at NASCAR because he would forgive her. Her family took the breakup harder than her. That family loved my brother.